Hey y'all! In this video, we're going to combine several techniques that we've already discussed in previous videos to design and toolpath one of these monogram wall hangings that are very popular. And this is in response to several questions I've had about these monograms when it comes to joining all of these vectors in here, the text for the last name and the large monogram initial in the center. There's a bit of confusion on how to close all these vectors and join them up to get all of the needed closed vectors. So we'll start in a new session of Aspire from the very beginning. Now, let me say right up front that these signs look their best big. The larger you can make them, the better. We're going to work within the limits of VCarve Desktop for this project, however. So let's go ahead and get into job setup. It is a single-sided project. I'm going to make the sizes 25 wide in X, 25 high in Y, and this uses 1/4 inch thick material. I'm going to set my Z0 at the material surface, and for layout purposes I'll put my XY datum in the center. We are not going to be 3D modeling, so nothing here is relevant to this project, so I'll just leave it alone, and we'll go ahead and click OK. To get started in the design process, what we'll need to do is start with a circle. And I'm going to make this pretty big. I want a 24-inch diameter outside perimeter out here. So we'll start with 24, and we'll create that circle. Now I want a 1-inch outer perimeter border here. So I'm going to make another circle immediately 2 inches smaller. So we'll go with the 22-inch diameter, and there's our outer border. I'll close that. Now the space from here to here is 1 inch, and the space from here to here is 1 inch. Now we'll go ahead and we're going to get all of the vectors we need put in here before we start trimming or modifying or joining anything. So I'll go ahead and click the inside circle, and I'm going to come over here to draw text within a vector box. We'll let that load up. The font I'm going to use for this big letter L initial is called Monogram KK. You can find this font online for free. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description box to the website where I found this font and downloaded it for free. So we'll go into Monogram KK, and we'll go up here and I'll just type a capital L for my last name. Then we'll close it. Now here's where we do a little bit of fiddling, because I'm going to have to increase the size. So I'll go ahead and click it again to go into Move and Transform mode, and I'm going to hold down Shift to lock this in the center. So all of my adjustments will be done from the center. And I'm going to pull it up a little bit larger, and we see down here on this corner where it's overlapping my inner circle. I want it to overlap down here and up here wherever it's going to touch first. And I can see right now it's going to be right here. This is already overlapping, this isn't. So I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard. And this is the up arrow to bring it up some. I need to increase the size a little bit more. And this is one of the little fiddly parts. I think that may be too big. Let me bump it up some more. And that is too big. And I can tell that by looking right here at this inside line. It's crossed over this inside circle border here. I don't want it to go quite that big. So I'll again hold down Shift and kind of bring that in a little bit. I want the outer line of this L to cross over this circle, both top and bottom. Bump it down a little bit more, but I don't want this inner line here to cross over it. Let me look down here at what we got. I think we can go just slightly bigger. So let me hold down Shift and again pull out just a little bit more. Look up here. And this is kind of one of those judgment call scenarios. I'm going to zoom in a little bit using my scroll wheel and bump up the arrow some. And I think that'll work. What I'm looking for is I want this line here, my circle, to kind of intersect about the middle of this gap between this outer vector and this inner vector. I want it to kind of intersect around the center of both of them. And that's close. That's good enough for this. So I'll click off to come out of Move and Transform mode and click up here on Zoom to Selected Objects to recenter my material. Okay, so we have our initial in the middle. Now I want to put my text of my last name in here. So again, I'll select that inner circle, come back up here to draw text within a vector box, and again I'm going to select a font. I have found that I prefer a sans serif font for this. On the previous example here, I used a different font that has these serifs here down at the base and up at the top of the blockier letters. And after looking at this, I'm really not much for it. It just, to me, looks out of place. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Sago UI Black for my font here on this one. It's 100% your choice. There is no right or wrong. It's just your personal preference. We'll come up here and we'll click. And I've also discovered that using all capital letters works best for this. So I'll just type out my last name in all capital letters. And we'll close this. Now, when you're selecting a vector box to type your text in, it sizes that text so that everything fits within that vector box with a decent margin all the way around it. I think I'm going to need to go ahead and enlarge this font some. So again, I'll click it a second time to go into Move and Transform mode and hold down Shift to lock it to the center and kind of bring it out a little bit. And I think that looks a little better. I want to keep a little bit of a space here, but I just want to fill it up some. Now what I'm going to do is go over to Set Selected Object Size with that font still selected, with that text still selected rather. And I think I'm going to go ahead and bring it up to 3.5 inches tall, but I don't want to make it much wider than this. So I'm going to go ahead and unlink my XY. I'm going to make this a even 20 inches in width, and I'm going to make it an even 3.5 inches high in Y. And I'll click Apply, and that made it just slightly taller and just slightly wider. And I think it looks a little bit more balanced. It doesn't look as squat and squished down. So now we'll go ahead and close that. Now, if we look at our example here, we have these two border lines that run horizontal straight across. Now, there are many ways of doing this, but the way I found that's easiest just for my own sanity is to go ahead and click on our Draw Line Polyline tool, and I'll zoom in here, and I'm just going to hover my cursor over this corner, the top left corner of my first letter. Just hover it over there for a couple seconds to let that point kind of wake up, then drag straight over just to this side of this inner circle here. And then click to start my line. Then I'll zoom out and come over to this side. And I want to go just to the outside of this circle again. And if you look at my readout below my cursor, you'll see A 0.0. That A stands for angle. I want to make sure I've got 0.0. That is a straight line running all the way across the top of my text. And I get over in here, and I'll just click, then space bar to accept that line. Now I'm going to do the same thing beneath. I'll hit the bottom right corner of the Y, just hover my cursor over it, then drag straight off over here. Now click to start my line. Zoom out, come over here, and bring this back up until I have A 0.0, and click again. Spacebar to accept that line. So now I have a border outside of my text. Now I want to offset. What I want for this large of a project is I want a line about a 1/2 inch up here and a 1/2 inch down here. Now you can go through all kinds of different combinations in figuring out how to offset one line one direction and another line another direction. But the easiest way I have found to do it is to select both of these lines. So I'll select the top line first, hold down Shift, select this line. I'll go down here to offset, and I'm going to offset it both ways. And I'll set my width to 0.5, offset. Close that. Then I'll just come back here, and this line here that's inside, down in the letters, I'll delete that. Then the same thing with this one here. Now I'm sure I've got a 1/2 inch space between these two lines and these two lines. We're going to do one more modification to this text here. And that is we're going to reset the size slightly, because what I want to do is I want to bring these letters up into this space in here and down into this space here. They don't need to go very far. They only need to go about 1/8 of an inch. So I want it to come 1/8 of an inch up in this space and 1/8 of an inch down in this space. 1/8 of an inch plus 1/8 of an inch is 1/4 of an inch. So with the text selected, I'll come up here to set selected object size, and I'll add 1/4 inch to my height, which will be, in this case, 0.75. I'll click Apply, Close. And now my text is slightly larger, and the top and bottom both transition down into this space. Now I can click off to deselect, zoom back out and center up on my material. And those are all of the vectors needed to create this project. Now we have a lot of cleanup to do, and it looks like a convoluted mess. This is where people start to get confused on creating a project like this. I'm going to try to cut through all of the confusion here, because we only need to use one tool to close all of these vectors, trim away everything that's unnecessary, and get this ready to calculate toolpaths. The first thing we'll need to do, however, is we'll need to convert this text to curves. So I've selected my capital L, then I'll right-click, convert to curves. Click off and select this text and do the same thing. Right-click, convert to curves. I have to convert these to curves in order to be able to edit or trim away anything. So, with everything converted to curves, I'll come over here and I'll pick up my interactive trim tool. What I want to make sure I do with this is I want to make sure I have that check mark in rejoin trim sections automatically when the form is closed. What that means is, as I come along and I trim away vectors, they're going to stay open vectors until I close this form. Then it will automatically join and connect all of these vectors together. So, we'll get started. Now, it looks like a confused mess right now. So what we're going to have to do is break it down into its simplest components. What we'll do is we'll start up here at the top, and we're going to join this letter L to the outside border up here at the top. Now, I'm going to try to do this fairly slowly so I don't make people sick by zooming in and out real quick. I'll come in, and you do have to zoom in pretty close, and I'll show you why. And I'll trim away the letter and the circle right there so that those are both joined. That right there is what we're looking for over the majority of this project. We want to trim away what we're joining and what we're joining it to. And that's the first step. Now what we want to do is we want to clear away everything in here. What I prefer to do is start with the letters. I want to come in here and I want to trim away any of this capital L that's inside a letter. So we'll start here. Now you do have to zoom in. And we'll come down here, and even though this is down in the bottom of the space, it's still within the letter. Trim that away. Now this is an area here, when you get into these small areas like this, these small segments, you will have to zoom in. And then zoom back out to check. Because what can happen is, if I come in here and I do this and I zoom out and I go to trim this, it worked that time, but a lot of times what you'll find is the line will stay there, and then you zoom out and you have eliminated something out here. It's just something within the program that I don't understand, but the possibility is there that you could trim away something you didn't intend to trim away. So be aware of that. When you're trimming small segments, zoom in and out and double check what you're doing. So we'll continue on and we'll trim away all of these segments that are inside the letters, no matter how small they are. Zoom out to check, make sure I didn't trim away something I didn't intend to trim away. We'll come in here, trim that. Zoom back out to make sure I haven't gotten rid of anything I don't want to get rid of. Okay, and it looks like I have gotten rid of everything inside the letters from my letter L. Now I want to come back in and the spaces in between the letters. I want to trim away any of this letter L that's in these spaces. So we have up here and here. And I'll just go back and forth down the line, and do come in and check, because I have a little one right here. I have to zoom way in and take that off. And the same thing down here on my letter S. I have a little piece right here. And we'll trim away these. And that should be all of the vectors inside my letters. Now, to carry this one step further, I want to come in and trim away any of my capital L that's below this line and above this line. I want to clear out this space here and here. So I'll start at the bottom, and I see that I missed one right here. So I'll trim that away as well. Trim there, come in. It doesn't matter how small they are, you want to trim this away, because these are all profile cuts that we're going to be doing. And looks like we have all of it down here. Now we'll go up to the top and we'll do the same thing. I have this. Zoom back out. Come in over here. And we have that all trimmed away. Looking good. Now what I want to do is I want to join these lines to my outside border to make this one contiguous piece here. So we'll just start over here and we'll trim this line to the circle. Then we'll trim the circle to the line. Then I'll do the same thing down here. Then I'll come over to this side and do the same thing here. And there we go. I've only got a couple of more things I need to trim. What I want to do is I want to trim all of these areas where parts of the capital L meet this inner border. So down here below I have these three. Zoom in. And that's done there. Now we'll go up to the top. Zoom in. And do those there. Now I only have one final step. I want to join these letters to these border sections. So I'll do that by zooming in, and I'll trim away the letter and the border where that letter meets. And I'll just go down the line, trim away the letter and the border, trim away the letter and the border. Now on curved letters such as this D, think of it in terms of node editing for just a second. We have a straight line and we have a curve. Usually what'll happen when you come into trim is you'll trim away a little segment and you still have that curve, and sometimes you'll have another segment over here. Just zoom in a little further and trim, zoom in further and trim. Then you can back up and do the same with this line. Then we'll come back over here to the letter S, trim. And the further in you zoom, the more likely you are to get a clean trim on the first attempt. So again, just zoom in, trim the letter and the border where you just trimmed your letter. By breaking it down into these individual components and doing them piece by piece, you eliminate the confusion. Now see there, it split again. You eliminate the confusion of a large jumbled mess of vectors Okay, now this is an area here where you could make a mistake. I have to zoom in real close. Trim, trim. Now we're okay. As if I were to try to trim those from further out, it could easily trim something out here that I don't want to get rid of. So we'll zoom in, trim, trim, and just continue on down the line. I want to double check. I want to look to make sure that my L is connected up here and connected down here, which it is. This part of the L is connected up here and connected down here. I don't have any vectors or vector segments in here that cross over the letters or the spaces in between the letters. Looks like we're good. I'll go ahead and close. And now that automatically joined all of the vectors. I can tell this by right-click, go to Selection, select all open vectors. No open vectors in design. We can make doubly sure by holding down the Control button on our keyboard, tap the letter A to select all of these vectors. Go over here under Edit Objects to join open vectors. Click that icon. We have 25 closed vectors. Our Join button is grayed out because there's nothing to join. So we can close this. And now we're ready to start calculating toolpaths. It goes that quickly when you break it down into its constituent segments and you take them one step at a time. It's real easy to go in and just start trimming and cutting and confuse yourself. So if you break it down step by step and ignore the other vectors and just concentrate on eliminating all the vectors inside the letters first, then come back and get the vectors that are in the spaces in between the letters. Then join the rest of them. Now, with everything still selected, I'm going to hold down Shift and deselect that outer circle. And I want to group all of those inner vectors. Click off to deselect, and now we're ready to calculate the toolpaths for this project. So, we'll go over here to our Toolpath tab, and I'll select that group of inner vectors. I'm going to come over to a profile toolpath. I used 1/4 inch material, so I do want to cut about, my preference is 5/1000ths of an inch deeper than my material is thick, but I have to start thinking a little bit about how I'm going to mount this material. It's a large piece, but I've got a bunch of small parts in here. I could add tabs, but that's going to be a lot of cleanup work. So what I prefer to do is I will go ahead and screw down this outer piece on these corners here. But I'm also going to use the CA glue and tape method, especially here in the center where all of these smaller parts are, so that these intersections don't go flying out, but I don't have any tabs to cut and clean up. It just cuts down on sanding. It's a trade-off. I spend a little bit more time doing tape and CA glue here, but I spend a lot less time sanding tabs for all of these little pieces to keep them from flying out while it's being cut. With that settled in my mind that I'm going to use tape and CA glue, I can get on with calculating the toolpath. My cut depth is 5/1000ths of an inch deeper than my material is thick. I'm going to use a small end mill here because I want to get into these corners. So I'm going to select a 1/16 of an inch end mill. and that's going to take 4 passes to go through 1/4 inch material. I'm fine with that. Here is something that we want to be careful about. I want to cut to the inside of these vectors. I don't want to cut to the outside. I'm not going to do a separate last pass. I am not going to add tabs. I'm going to ramp in the plunges on this small bit. I can use a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to call this profile inside. We'll calculate that toolpath. I'm getting the warning that it's going to cut through the material. And we'll go ahead and we'll preview that toolpath. Now, I'm just going to double click to get rid of the waste on the top part here. I'm not going to go all the way through this. Mainly because the area that I want you to pay attention to right here is this little loop of the L. Now you see how it's pretty thin because of the design of the font. But notice how much material we have left here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the preview and go back into my toolpath, and I'm going to calculate it again and show you what it looks like if I go with the outside of the vectors. If I machine the outside of the vectors, calculate it again, then preview it, it cuts even thinner to where it's almost cut through here. We do get a little bit better definition of the letters, but we have made some of this material so thin that we risk breaking it before we even get it off of the machine bed. I'll reset that preview, go back to a straight Z view. So that's why I went to the inside of the vectors. I'll calculate that again, preview it, and we see there we have much more material left behind to work with. That's why I did it that way, rather than calculating to the outside. Go through here and get rid of my waste. It'll only take me a few seconds. And we'll get a good look at this monogram. Again, font selection is 100% up to you. We're looking good so far. Now we'll come over, select the outside circle, close my preview window, and we'll do our profile cutout. I want to do these 2 toolpaths separately because I don't want the bit to just start cutting out my outside profile first. Even though I'm going to be using tape and CA glue to hold this down, I don't want to run the risk of this being cut first and having something break loose while it's cutting in here. So I want these to be separate toolpaths. Now for this, I don't need to use that tiny of a bit. I can use a 1/4 inch end mill, so I can go at a faster feed rate. I'm going to cut to the outside of this vector, and everything else I'll go ahead and ramp in over a distance of 1 inch, not 0.1, 1.0. Thank you very much. And we'll call this profile cut out. Calculate. Preview. And there's our monogram. And I think I prefer this version with this font over this version much, much better. So, the things to remember when you're doing one of these monogram cutouts are: take it step by step, after you convert your text to curves, join your big initial to your outer rim, then start from inside. Personally, I start in the center and start trimming away any vectors that are inside the letters, then in between the letters. Then I go for my spaces, top and bottom, then join up my text with my top and bottom spaces. For those of you who are interested in the numbers, using the standard feed rates I have selected with my bits, this will take approximately 40 minutes. Mainly that's because I'm using such a small bit on the inside here. 42 minutes is not bad for something of this size. This is a large piece. Remember, this is a 24-inch diameter circle. So, I hope you got something out of this video. The main thing to remember is take it slow, go step by step, ignore the other vectors until you get that one step finished. Then move on to the next step. If you did get something out of this video, I do hope you'll give me a thumbs up. Remember, today at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I'll be hosting a live Q&A session where we'll be discussing these monogram signs, the converting text to curves, offsetting, or anything else I've discussed in this video. Again, that's today at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on my YouTube channel. And I'll put a link to that live Q&A session down in the description box of this video. Now, these live Q&A sessions are a good reason to go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already. Just look down below this video, click that red subscribe button to make it gray, then click that little bell right next to it. That way you'll get a notification the next time I post a video and the next time I go live. So, I hope to see you this afternoon for the live Q&A session. And as always, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and you all take care.